Hello and welcome to the final day of HR Transform. I'm Tara Fioriani, CEO of Not the HR Lady, an international people firm and a super funny and very popular business show of the same name, which was actually supposed to launch at HR Transform in Las Vegas in March 2020. But we all know how that played out. Thanks, COVID. But the show went on. We're in our second season, and I am so excited to talk with so many of my friends today on this impactful session about employee engagement and productivity in, for some, the new hybrid worlds of work. When this conversation has ended, we hope that you leave with ideas for your own pivot related to remote and in-person engagement and productivity. We hope you learn what HR leaders and practitioners need to both embrace and lead change during these trying times. And we hope you leave with a few resources as well and some new friends. Before we meet today's expert panelists, please use the Ask a Question button. It's right under the video. Just look down and it's on the left. You can also chat with us in the box right below that in the bottom left. It says chat. You can engage with the speakers, our hosts, and HR transformers all over the world. Okay, you've heard enough from me. Let's meet our international panel of women leaders who are discussing this important topic that all of us are going through right now. I'm going to start and kick it off to Karen. Tell us a little bit about you and where everybody can find you.
Hi, everybody. I am Karen Weeks. I am based in Brooklyn, New York. I am the head of people for a company called Order Groove. We are about 100 people. We used to be based in New York, but now we are throughout the US, which I know we'll talk a lot about here shortly. And we're a SaaS technology company. So we are really focused on helping retailers and brands build subscription programs for their clients. But more importantly for us, we're trying to make sure our people feel safe and supported and all the things that they need currently during this very strange time that we're living in. So I'm thrilled to be here with everybody and can't wait to have this conversation.
Karen, thank you so much. I love hearing safe and supported coming out of a company's objectives mouth. That is beautiful. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us from across the pond for those of us in the US, but you're kind of on vacation. Tell everybody, or not vacation, living and working remotely like a nomad, and I'm here for it. Tell us who you are, where you work, and what you're up to.
Sure. So I'm Kelly Hartman. I'm an Aussie. Have lived in London for 12 years, but during COVID, I sort of took myself out and have been working from Italy, Greece, Turkey, Antigua, and now am living in Dominica. So have really taken advantage of the lockdown and being so far from my family. So I'm a world traveler. I am the chief engagement and wellness officer at Flywire. Formerly, I was the CPO there. So there's a huge investment in wellness, mental health, the support and care for our flymates. And so we have a role dedicated to that. So I'm very happy to be involved with that. For those that don't know Flywire, Flywire is a fintech organization. We have 500 plus people across about 13 locations around the world. And we help deliver on life's most important payments. So if we're thinking education for, to pay your education, for holidays, for healthcare, for and technology. So a very exciting time in the world at the moment, very difficult for a lot of people too. But, we've just had to embrace what has happened and support our flymates. We call our employees flymates as best we can. So, yeah, huge growth plans for Flywire, but people, are really at the heart of everything we do.
I love it. Kelly, thank you so much for sharing. I love hearing and seeing in real life Flywire's commitment to everybody kind of doing what's best for them. And that's evident by you, and you're traveling while working and getting to experience life while getting to continue your doing good work for others while they experience whatever life looks like for them. So I love that. I commend it. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. Amy, hello. Welcome. Tell everybody who you are and where we can find you.
Hi, everybody. I'm thrilled to be here with this esteemed panel, and I always learn so much from these discussions. I'm Amy Cappellanti-Wolf, and I'm actually in Cupertino, California, which Bay Area. I think we've got all aspects practically of the globe, with the exception of Antarctica, represented on today's call. I'm in a unique position. I have been many, many years in human resources with Frito-Lay, Disney, Sun, Cisco, Silver Spring, a startup we took public, and most recently Symantec, a cybersecurity company. So I've seen it all. over the last few decades. And I've taken some time off beginning in February after we sold our business last year to Broadcom. So the good part is I've been busy in terms of cooking lots of meals for my daughters and my husband while we've been in lockdown. But I've also done a lot of work publishing, a lot of speaking, as well as I'm on a few boards, one of which is a managed services board or company that works on people. So they wanted to get a head of HR on their board. And so I am extremely interested in where we're at these days. I feel for my fellow CHROs who've been on the front line. If you weren't already important, certainly now people see the importance of HR. So I'm thrilled for the position and leadership that we've taken. And I'm also seeing the fatigue out there. And I'm also very curious and really have a lot of ideas around return to work and the future of work. So I'm excited about this panel because I think engagement is so critical right now as we move through the place we're at right now. Racial injustice, economic unrest. I don't know what else we can add, but I think we're on the forefront of goodness going forward. So I'm excited to learn and share my perspectives on employee engagement and what this means for the future of work.
I love it. Let's dive in. And Amy, I want to give the first question to you because you gave me such a beautiful tee off. We didn't even practice. Employee engagement and productivity often go hand in hand. What has worked for you and what have you seen throughout your career at Disney, at Frito-Lay, at Cisco, and all the things you're doing, all the boards you're on? How do you create a great place to work while getting the most out of your teams? Just baseline. Forget the hybrid world of work. How do we do it at all?
Yeah.
And then I want to hear from everybody. So I'm going to start with you, Amy, and then I'm going to move it over to Kelly and then over to Karen to answer and kind of give their 2 cents as well.
Perfect. Thank you for that. It's a great question. And I know I'm not going to give you a rocket science response. I'm going to give you a response that requires discipline and purposefulness. And that's being very clear about your company strategy. What are you on earth to do? And how do you link your employees and their mission towards your mission and ensure, one, everyone understands the strategy and where they fall within helping to execute that strategy. They also have an opportunity for continuous feedback about how they're performing and their development. And they also have an opportunity to know how they contribute and how they can help grow their careers. So it's everything from strategy alignment, constant communication and transparency, and quite frankly, a very strong say-do ratios. When leaders say they're going to do something, they need to execute on what they said they're going to do and meet their commitments because employees are taking score and they're watching. So I can't think of the most basic mechanisms for employee engagement, such as those.
So true. I couldn't agree with you more. Kelly, what have you experienced? What do you see?
Yeah, I'm totally in support of everything that was previously said. So I can just add on to that. I think, and as it was mentioned, there's it's not brain science. So it's the trust element, like following up and saying what you're going to say you're going to do, treating people with respect. So having the executives really drive this, and I've worked for many companies before, and when you as a HR person are pushing the people strategy, it will never work. So I think I'm very fortunate at Flywire. I have a CEO and executive team that push the people strategy, and I think that is key to all of this. And even prior, like COVID things, when you have a global company, we had an investment in travel. It wasn't seen as a cost, like for people to work together to see. If our CEO came into London town, he's in Boston, he'd take the whole office to dinner. So it wasn't just the executives. And I know that's not, able to be done in, companies that have thousands and thousands of people, but it's the sort of equality, like not making sure that one person gets something because they're more senior and something else. Like we all have full exposure. Right. I think the importance of setting boundaries and having great conversations, but it is very linked into making sure that people know what they're doing in terms of their career and helping support them, but making sure that they drive their career, but how do we support them in the process? So and being really clear, if you're not going to get a promotion or you're not performing, have that candid conversation like that. I think none of this is brain science. I've been in the industry for over 25 years and I don't think anything or the principles have changed over that time.
They really haven't. Where have we gone wrong? And I want to ask you that question, Karen. And I know this isn't one we talked about, but in the spirit of fluidity and just having the conversation, Kelly is so right. All of us have been in this space for a very long time, and it's not rocket science. Why do people not seem to understand what we're talking about? Give it to us. Help people get what we're saying.
I think this might be the first time that they have felt it themselves. Their COVID and being remote and being aware of what happened in the States over the last year, you can't ignore it. No matter your level, no matter your background, yes, you may have had different intensity of interaction with some of the fallout that happened. We all were in lockdown. We were all stuck inside our houses. We all had to figure out how to work from home. And I think those are some of the things that made it very equal across the board. Again, recognize that there are lots of different demographics that got impacted harder, but the baseline was the same for everybody. And I think I even see it from candidates, instead of the typical question of, tell me about your culture, and having it just be this question that they know they're supposed to ask, they're now asking, how did you decide to go from home? How have you decided to stay home? Did you force people to go back in? How did you address social injustice? How did you deal with the political climate? They now know what this looks like. And so I think we have to respond, or we're not going to hire anybody and everybody's going to quit. And then that's going to destroy your business.
Yeah, that fills my heart with joy that you're hearing candidates ask that, because it's so vitally important to stop with the BS, stop with the fluff. People want to have real things, real tangible impact on society. They want to do meaningful work. They want to know that the people they're working for aren't just a bunch of jerks. And I think that there's a real we could get into this for a very long time, but I do want to get into a little bit about what it means in a post-COVID world. And I do want to kick it right back to you, Karen, if you don't mind. What does meaningful engagement look like in a post-COVID world? Like, how do we authentically demonstrate as an organization, as leaders, as individuals even, that we're committed to people first, and that we're committed to ensuring that everybody has an equitable place to call work home? What does that look like?
I think for me, it ties to two different things. One is everything that we had to be reactive about in the past year. Now let's turn it into a strategy. So our flexible work from anywhere policy, obviously that had to happen because we literally could not go into the office. We now realized in the worst of times it worked. So let's keep offering that for folks. Yes, if they're in New York and they want to go in the office, fine. Obviously, we'll provide that for them. But if not, even if they're in New York and they don't want to go in every day, that's fine. We're hiring outside of New York. So we really took that now as a leverage point to say, this is working. We trust you to do the best work possible in the way that works for you. Why should we pull that away just because we physically can go back into an office? And for us, that ties directly to our values. So I think leaning into your values and using those for decisions and role modeling the behavior of those values, hopefully tie all that together moving forward now as well.
Kelly, what does it look like? You guys have already been doing it. This is an old hat to you to have a hybrid environment, that you guys were already decentralized. But what does it look like moving forward from some of the conversations we've been talking about that have happened over the last year that people are finally sort of starting to grab onto? What does it look like for Flywire moving forward?
I think there's it's pre-COVID, post-COVID, there's no one size that fits all. That's what we've got to get to. I created personas in the organization to say, okay, as a parent, there are toddlers, there's a returning parents, there's single parents, there's ones for adoptions, there's people living alone, there's people that have family overseas. Every single person is different. And that goes from their learning styles, that goes from their wellness, that goes into the way they want to work. So what's going to work for me and the hours are going to work for me and may not be for someone else. And I think we've got to tap into that much more, because organizations sometimes have one training program for everyone, but some people want to learn by themselves, and some people want to learn in a classroom environment. Some people want to join a social activity, others don't. That goes for their careers, that goes for every single thing. So my element, my takeaway for this is everyone is an individual, and treat them like that, and tap into what motivates, what drives them, what frustrates them, what annoys them. That is my number one. And show genuine care. People can tap into it. I think that is the thing that has been missing for all organizations, but others. Get to know your people. Like, I think get to know, as managers, as a HR team, as people, like, get to know how you can help support them. And that's, at the moment for us, like, it's been a tiring times. Like, EAP isn't working for us. We've got in-house psychologists, but people are opening up and I say, why wouldn't you go to EAP, or why wouldn't you use your private health insurance? And they say, Kelly, because we feel comforted that you've given us a referral, and we feel comforted that you know what we're going through and you can follow up. And so we have 50 psychologists working with we have 50 flymates working with a variety of psychologists that have chronic illness, like the actual psychologists. Some are gay, some are Black, some are Hispanic, some are Muslim, like, so very different nationalities and different, so diversity has to link into everything you do as well. So when you have providers, make sure they're diverse providers. Like, why are we always getting, American providers when we've got a global team of 13 locations? And I think that they're very, it's very important in terms of what we do with our flymates.
I love that they're having that you've had that recognition, and that there's dialogue around exactly what you just said. We don't have to use American providers. Show representation, not just in your workforce, but with who you choose to do business with. I love that. And I think that speaks volumes about your company. Amy, there's so much to think about with employee engagement, the hybrid world of work. When you're thinking about handling a hybrid environment where this was the first iteration of ever having one, we've never done it before. We had to sign up for Zoom, maybe not that drastic, but there are a lot that just did not have or did not believe in sort of the decentralized environment that's going to kind of stick around. What can companies do to make the transition easier on them? How can they get to a place where it's not seen as a disruption, but rather it's embraced? The world of hybrid work is embraced and continue to be lived from a cultural perspective, even in cyberspace. If we're not stuck in some building together, how do we still create that culture? How do we keep it alive? And what can companies do to even start the process?
I just want to echo, I love this notion of consumerism, because we've been talking about it for years, about how every individual employee is different, but we've not done a good job with it. So I think, and I always believe there's a silver lining to everything. So while COVID's been devastating for many families and economies and companies, it also opens up the aperture. And the one thing that we are good at the US, and I think in other parts of the world, is adapting to the changing things that happen around us. And so I think there was times when I've worked with CEOs who said, if everybody's not in the office, they're probably at home on Netflix or watching their kids. And I never believed that. I believe in outcomes in terms of how you manage performance. But now I think we've broken that very old persona. And now I think we've proven you can be productive. I'm mostly concerned on how do you maintain productivity, because you can get your day job done, but are you really the future from a roadmap perspective? So how do you leverage hybrid workplaces to be more drop-in points beyond Zoom to actually do collaboration in person, and then go back to wherever you need to go back to get your work done? So leverage this hybrid environment to come together when it really matters. I can remember days and days of having meetings with 30 people in it, which were completely unproductive. How do you take advantage of this hybrid world to get the people that matter for that particular challenge to solve in the room, to solve it together, either through Zoom or in person? But I think we've broken the paradigm that you can work remotely. I also think it opens up much more choice around talent. If you think about workforce planning, we often hire where we have locations, and we're usually tied to our real estate footprint from a cost perspective. Now this opens up our armature about hiring the right talent regardless of where they sit to do the job. And the last thing I'm going to say is, I think a population that is completely underserved has been our managers. I think they are squished in the middle between the leaders and the employees. And very often you end up as a manager, not sometimes by your own choice, but because you're really good at a particular individual contributor role, and now we're going to make you a manager. So my view would be, let's double down not only on the inclusive leadership at the top, but giving managers the tools around empathy, around really creating and understanding where people are and creating a safe environment, helping them establish goals, pivoting quickly as things prioritize and change. So I think it's one, there's no looking back, the work has changed. We've proven we can leverage remote and virtual. And then how do we give the tools such that the new capabilities aren't just about strategic thinking and stakeholder management? They're about empathy, joy, creating awe, having a place that's connected. So different. And then resilience. Thing I'll say is resiliency now has become a core capability that in the past was people talked about but didn't really make it an expectation. I think all those things are now open for organizations to start to embrace and put process and programs around them.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more with you. Kelly, I want to kick it over to you really quick, if you don't mind. We had some questions from the audience. Oh, do you want to say something in response first?
No, I was just saying I really, I really agree with everything Amy says, especially with the people management. And I was lucky to be trained by Brene Brown in Texas a couple of years ago.
Oh my
So we
gosh.
brought all her braving stuff into our managers. So it's all around empathy, even mental health, how to support mental health, and having those conversations, because some managers don't want to be managers, they don't. And one other thing we've done with the hybrid world is fly lodges. So we have fly lodges. We've had them in Israel, New York, Maine. So we hire a whole villa and it's a work collaborative space. People have just said it's changed everything, and they rather that every quarter than actually going to the office, because and it's all, people are COVID tested, everything is done, amazingly well, and people are safe, but people have the option to go and work in this beautiful villa in around the world where they're located, as long as the government provides. So that's been a really key thing. A lot of people still want that interaction, but not necessarily want to be in work every day, as Amy and Karen said.
That's amazing. And I echo, Amy, I echo your sentiment about managers always being left behind. It is truly the saddest level for development, because we promote them and go, wow, you're really good at your job as an individual contributor. You should be a manager. And then we make them a manager and we're like, you're on your own. You were good. You got to figure it out. I hate it. So I love that you said that. I couldn't agree more with you. We did have a few questions from the audience that I do want to get to. Kelly, one was specific to wellness, and I want to ask you for your recommendation, though open it up to everybody else as well. Are there any wellness platforms that you recommend? And I guess I'll go a step further and just say, are there any engagement platforms that you recommend as organizations? But I want to start with you, Kelly, first, related to wellness.
Sure. So I'm just going to be really honest. I've looked at different platforms. I'm not going to recommend anything at first, except for some of the meditation apps like Calm and things like that, because I feel like people still want that interaction. So even though they offer coaching and wellness and things like that, a lot of them want to, as I said, referred, coaching, or, in terms of physical classes. I think everyone is different again. So even though we had a wellness platform and it was very successful, for some people wanted it, and other people were like, okay, after 3 months, they just want to, be social with someone, or they want to do a yoga class with their fly mates, or, things like that. So I think there are a lot of platforms out there, but I'm going to hand it over to someone else. We haven't used one significantly through the organization yet. And I'm sure there are a lot out there. I just haven't assessed, and I think not everyone wants it in our organization, yet some people love the convenience of it.
I think that's great. So we'll leave it at, please Google wellness platforms and do the research that may work best for your organization. You could also Google employee engagement platforms if you're looking for software specifically, but don't rely on that. That would be my tip. Don't rely on a piece of software to solve your problems. That you can't just throw stuff at something and make sure that it's like, now you can check that box. Don't do that. That's not the right approach. We have another question, and Karen, I'm going to give it to you to start. What are some tips for managing teams that are partially in a physical location and partially remote?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's actually something that we had dealt with at Order Groove before COVID, because we did have a couple of folks that were remote, and it felt even more odd for them because it was such a few number and it was maybe one person on a team. And so a couple of things that we did was, first of all, have everybody work remote at least one day so they know what it's like to be the person on the Zoom call and know what it's like to not be able to jump in as easily or not see the whiteboard that everybody else is referring to in the room. So be empathetic to what that's like and experience it yourself, especially as a manager, so you can put yourself in their shoes when you're facilitating that next conversation. You know, oh, I need to turn the camera. Oh, we actually need to figure out a virtual whiteboard or virtual Post-its or whatever so that everybody can take part in this conversation. And then I think the other thing too is to schedule non-meeting time with your team for that natural organic interaction. One team that we have, an engineering team, they just have an open Google Hangout all day. And literally you can pop in and out whenever you want. You can say hi, you can show a picture of your dog or your cat walks by or whatever. So it's non-meeting related. And it's that I bumped into you in the kitchen, I rode the elevator with you kind of conversation. So create opportunities and space for those sort of things, not just always, here's a meeting, here's the agenda, this is what we're talking about, because then it will just be about work and not have that personal connection for those that aren't in the office with folks.
Oh, I love that. I love the hallway idea. That is genius and really cool. I think I'm going to start trying that. That's a great idea. Let's talk about that later. Kelly, what do you got? Give us a tip for managing teams that are partially in the office and partially at home. You've been doing this forever, so you probably have a tremendous amount of value to bring to this conversation. Give us a couple of tips.
So walking meetings are a good one. So I'm the same with Karen. We just do walking, and now a lot of people in the organization, I'm like, if you don't need to be in front of your screen, because there are some jobs that do need to be there, but when you're having one-on-ones, go for a walk. And so that's obviously if they're not in lockdown or they're able to do that. We do very similar to Karen. It's like we just have open hangouts at special times of the day, and we have a lot of like, meet the we have kids activities, we have sporting activities, we just have an escape room, or let's go and Uber Eats, and people get to Uber Eats and they have a meal together like you're having lunch. So it's a very, very similar, and not just talk about work, like make sure that our managers are supported in like not talking about work with their employees all the time. It's just like, how are you? Like they're going for a coffee chat.
I love it. Amy, close us out with about a minute to go. Before we start wrapping up, give our audience some tips from your perspective on what they can do to better manage their remote and virtual teams.
Well, I'll use back to my sort of not brain science, but take care of yourself first. And you all know the analogy, when you're on a plane and oxygen masks drop down, put yours on first versus that of your child, because you need to really be in a safe place and in a confident place before you can help others. So I'm very big on self-reflection, journaling, meditation, whether it's running, whatever it takes for you to get centered and grounded every day, because if you aren't, you won't get your employees there. So that would be the first thing. Two, I love the notion, I miss the casual collisions when you're in a doorway and you solve a problem that you've been talking about forever and you run into somebody. So I really encourage, as Karen mentioned, about really creating opportunities for people to connect in different ways versus just for meetings. Thirdly, I would just really open up your ears and be in a state of inquiry. I think we get into task mastering. We got to get this done. We advocate for our position. And I believe like being present and not getting caught in the outcome and getting detached around that will help you actually open up people's ideas and create more creativity, because you're listening to their ideas and thoughts and not just kind of pushing through and mandating. So I think those are super critical. So take care of yourself, open up your ears, listen, ask employees, get their perspective, and then just make certain that you enter every conversation trying to understand what the shoes of the person that you're talking to, how they're standing in their shoes, because people are going to bring political concerns, economic concerns, health concerns. And so now's the time to really practice that empathy as you move through, where we're at as in this work world that we find ourselves in.
This half hour went by way too fast. We have 1 exact minute to go. Amy, tell us quickly one word to sum up hybrid and remote work related to employee engagement and productivity. What's your biggest takeaway for the group? 1 word, and then tell us where we can find you.
Wow, that's a tough one. Okay, I would say connected. Connected.
I love it. Where can we find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. You can find me on any of those platforms.
All right, Kelly, to you.
Agility. So make sure agility. You can find me on LinkedIn, Kelly Hartman. Yeah, agility.
Love it. Karen, give it to us.
trust. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, just Karen D. Weeks.
I love it. Thank you to HR Transform, to our panelists, Kelly, Amy, and Karen. I'm Tara Furiani. You can find me at notthehrlady.com. Spring Summit has been awesome. We look forward to talking with you next time. See you in Vegas in 2022.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.